say you are my friend.
You probably need some nerve to cover Bob Dylan, but that's just what veteran blues rocker Rory Block has done on her new album, Positively 4th Street. Rory covers 9 of Dylan's tunes, ranging from his classics to a few lesser-known nuggets, including a 20-minute version of Murder Most Foul. We caught up with Rory Block, who was in upstate New York with her husband and co-producer Rob Davis, and spoke to her about why she decided to sing Bob's songs. As it turned out, Mr. Dylan and her go way back to when Bob would hang out at her dad's sandal shop in Greenwich Village. Alan Block was a musician as well.
Yes, Alan Block Sandal Shop. And he had some fame in his own right as a fiddle player.
Right.
And because of his fiddle playing, he drew many musicians, great musicians, people who were either already getting famous, like John Sebastian from The Lovin' Spoonful, Maria Muldaur from Midnight at the Oasis, and so on. Yep. And Bob Dylan, for a time, lived 2 doors away from the Alan Block Sandal Shop on West 4th Street, positively West 4th Street. So I really grew up on West 4th Street, even though I went home to Perry Street, where our apartment was. Right. And then before that, I had lived in what was called at the time Little Italy. I don't know if they still call it that. A great neighborhood. Right. Both of them were great neighborhoods. So Bob lived in 169, and my dad's sandal shop was 171. And I came over after school every day. And one day there was this incredibly wonderful looking young man. He's, a little older than me. He was somebody I would look up to. And he just looked so artistic. And he had on that hat that he had on one of his earliest recordings, like a little cap.
Right.
And he was talking to my dad, and I became immediately aware of his artistic presence. I didn't know that much about him, and it was really, really early on in his career. But I could just feel the art vibes, the artistic vibes. And then when he left, my father said, you see that young man, he doesn't really care what goes on in the business side of things. He's not into the business side. He's into his art. He's into his poetry. His art means more to him than anything. He wants to remain true to his art. And I thought, even as a 12 or 13-year-old, I thought, what a great message. And I keep it in my heart all the time. It defines the way I feel.
Yep. And the thing that strikes me about Dylan, I mean, I've been following him for billions of years as well. And I still learn new things about him. And I'm amazed at his obvious passion for other people's music as well. And he knows what he's talking about, I mean, he really digs deep,
Oh, yeah. Once in a while, I'll find some radio show that he did and he's talking about, and he knows every single jazz artist. Yeah. Did they send you the record, by the way?
I don't have the record, no.
Oh, no.
I mean, I've listened to the files.
So the online. The Murder Most Foul.
Yes.
At the end.
Yes, I listened.
All of a sudden, before release, it's getting like almost the strongest response of any. It's 20 minutes.
Yes.
And in that song, he lists all these artists, and it goes on and on. As you say, the depth of his musical knowledge and influences is vast.
Yep. And I think the great thing about that is that influences whoever listens to him as well. You're like, who is that? Why does Bob think that this person is important? If he thinks maybe I should check it out.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And we'll talk a little bit more about Bob before we talk about you. So I don't know what your relationship is with him these days, if you know him now or if you only knew him back then.
Only thus far.
What I'm just curious as to the public perception of Bob Dylan. Is that at all anything to do with the real guy?
I honestly talk to his manager all the time, and I get messages to and from.
Right.
And I also have indirect contact through a couple of band members. Cindy Cashdollar and I used to do Sisters of Slide. And I mean, everybody has good things to say about Bob. I mean, I said, what was it like working with Bob? And she says, fantastic. He's kind to everybody, that type of thing. But I haven't yet been introduced to him, but before I leave this planet, I'd like to meet him face to face. And he's passed some messages that I feel like he truly understands what I do as well, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
the country blues and all that. So he's very knowledgeable about, as you said, all different styles, wide range of styles, very knowledgeable.
Gotcha. So now let's get back to your record. The most daunting thing I would find about doing a tribute to Bob Dylan is trying to figure out what songs to do, because there's
That's it. You
how
got
did
it.
you
I don't know, and I wish I said, "Rob, maybe we should do volume 2," because I didn't get a chance to do, "Don't Fall Apart on Me Tonight." I'm like, "Oh," and down in Memphis with down stuck inside with the Memphis Blues again, and, song after song, and what was the other one? Sweetheart Like You.
yeah.
I'm like, "We should have done those too," and then we ended up what was the total length, Rob, of the CD? Over an hour? About an hour? Yeah, we had to stop. We
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
stop.
yeah.
So I really I do wish, I would have a chance to do more because talk about unfolding wisdom through the words and the chords. And honestly, his singing is so beautiful. And there was a school of thought like, well, why is he not being fancier? This is way back in the 60s. A friend of mine said in the beginning, he was the anti, he didn't appreciate the singing, and now he loves it.
Yep.
I loved it all along, and obviously most other people loved it too, or he wouldn't have become one of the biggest musicians in history. But his style is so authentic and rich and beautiful, and it's just so real. He's not, again, like my dad. My dad didn't care what other people thought. He wasn't trying to be famous. He was just playing music for the joy of playing music. My dad had a similar kind of related philosophy, but just so happened that Dylan was in the realm where he linked up with the right record company, the right people who knew what they had and knew how to promote it. But my dad he didn't even record most of his life.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I'm not making an analogy between my dad and Bob Dylan, except that they were both very genuine, and Bob still is. My dad lost my dad a few years back, but thank goodness Bob is still having his amazing career. He's still strong, obviously, and an inspiration.
He is indeed.
Yeah.
So now the album starts out with 2 tracks that were originally on Oh Mercy, and from what I read, Everything's Broken is like one of the last things you recorded for the record, and Ring Them Bells one of the first. So
Ring the Bell, that's right. Ring Them Bells was the first. And I could tell you that tale, like what happened with that song, and I will in a minute.
please do.
But Everything is Broken was Holger Peterson. Do you have any knowledge of him? He's kind of a well-known.
A little bit, yep.
He was the head of Stony Plain Records, and everybody who knows him absolutely adores him. And he has a Canadian radio show as well as being a record company person. And everyone on the label absolutely loves him. He's a go-to guy. He's just a solid gold person. Okay. And he said when the whole record had basically been turned over and it was over 50 minutes, so it was like I could have stopped there.
Yep.
But he said, why don't you put on a blues track for the blues programmers? He said, and he also always comes through with like, don't forget to play slide, and I'm like, oh, and I added a slide part to Positively 4th Street when Holger said that. So he always says the right thing at the right moment. And he was the one who said, don't forget a blues song. And so I'm really glad I put that on. I had great fun doing that one. The words are so cool.
Broken lines, broken strings, broken threads, broken springs, broken idols, broken heads, people sleeping in broken beds. Ain't no use in jiving, ain't no use in joking, 'cause I said that everything is broken. Everything.
Okay, now Ring Them Bells.
Everything. Okay, Ring Them Bells. It was the first song that we recorded. We were in our Kentucky studios, which is south, and you know where Kentucky is. That's right. I'm not talking to someone who's lived their whole life in where you are now, but you were.
I'm familiar with
stateside.
Kentucky.
Oh, okay. So we were there, and I said, Rob, let's just approach this the same way that we do our broadcast. I'll do it live. You do the vocal and guitar at the same time, and I'll just get it like that. And he said, "Are you sure we won't be able to like mix the vocal and or replace any part if we don't like something? It's done is what's done is done if you do it that way." So I said, "But I just want the vibe." So and then somehow, some freaky reason, I thought it was a half a step below pitch where I had to do it. So I tuned the strings down. I was playing in F, but it was a half step lower, and it was very rubbery. The strings got really loose and rubbery, but it was a feeling, very passionate feeling, and I sang it, and that's the vocal. That I just did one take.
Yep.
That's the vocal that's on the final song.
Ring them bells, ye heathen from the city that dreams. Ring them bells in the sanctuaries, in the valleys and streams. For the deep and wide, and the world's on its side. Time is running backwards, so is the bride.
But we had to keep on redoing the guitar because it was going in and out of tune, because as guitar players or other stringed instrument players know, if you go below pitch, it begins to wobble. And if you play hard, it goes, whoa, it goes in and out of tune.
Right.
So the guitar was not in pitch at all. So we had to replace it. It took forever without replacing the vocal.
I can imagine.
I had to keep on playing guitar, and I didn't do any kind of a click track. You know what I had to do? Because I was playing without a click track, and the passion of the moment, and this is very typical of music, you pick up tempo while you're performing. If it's just you and a guitar, like Mississippi John Hurt sped way up during Frankie and Albert, or either that or the tape sped up. That can happen, because that happened to me once. The whole session sped up, and we had to throw it out. But so I sped up, and by the time we were done, there was no replacing something from verse 1 into verse 3 because the tempo got, and it sped up. I sped up a lot during the bridge, and I had a couple of out of tune guitar parts that I had to fix. So what we did was we captured everything note by note where it went out of tempo. That was towards the end of the song, thank goodness. And we captured everything, highlighted, just like in text. You highlight everything right up to the point, and then you select that, and then you select the next piece that came in a little too soon.
Yeah.
And you grab that piece and you go,
Yep.
and you move it over, and then you listen like, oh, good. It slowed down the whole track a little, because where I was speeding up just came in too soon. So we had to work like that on the sped up parts just because it didn't sound right. And then I put a drum on top of it, but it took a while to even it out and replace all the guitar parts in different tunings that were not out of tune. So it was crazy, but I think it came out where we wanted it. Suddenly, I mean, we were struggling, like, oh no, that doesn't sound good. Oh my God. And then all of a sudden, it like, that works.
Yep.
Oh yeah, thank goodness. It was such a relief, and it felt really good finally, but it was the hardest song on the whole record because of that. And
Gotcha.
after that, we said, I'm going to put my own click track on.
Yeah.
That's how we do our click tracks. I play them myself.
Gotcha.
And we don't use a computerized click track, and it keeps the human feel in there.
Yeah.
But you have to build it a little, you have to get it totally the tempo just right.
Now, I understand your favorite Dylan tune is Like a Rolling Stone. You managed to squeeze that in there, huh?
How does it feel? I said, how does it feel to be without a home? Like a complete unknown, like a rolling stone.
I was living in Greenwich Village. I was a young teenager. And when it came on, it was just like a victory. It was just, oh, this is our theme song. This is too good. I mean, it was just like we were going to make it because of the music that we were listening to. There were other hard things going on, And see, Dylan says things that other people are afraid to say, and they're thinking those things, but they just won't say them. But when you're Dylan and you say them, it rocks everybody's world, and people are saying, "Yes,
Very good way to put it. Yes.
yes," and a lot of his words are relationship words, and they're everybody can relate to. You got a lot of nerve to say you are my friend. Everyone go, "Oh, he said it. We were thinking it, but he said it." So
Yeah.
it's really all about the power of his poetry and his the unrolling of the human experience, really. I mean, maybe that's a slightly fancy way to say what I'm trying to say, but we're hearing it and we're going, "Yeah, he nailed it."
Yeah.
That's what we're going through.
Yeah. Now, speaking of poetry,
Yeah.
you also did, I think, what is my favorite Dylan song, which is Mr. Tambourine Man.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not a sleepy and there is no place I'm a-going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I come following you.
Oh, I couldn't leave that one out.
Good.
I loved it. Same thing where it came on the radio and it was like our theme to our life. And I did see an interview with him about a year ago on YouTube. I found this interview where he was not as excited about his early music as and I thought like, oh, I hope he didn't not appreciate me pulling out some of his early stuff. But I also did Mother of Muses,
Right.
and I also did, Murder Most Foul. And I wasn't trying, I didn't have a plan except for those things that moved me and rocked my world, that they were the first things that came into my mind, you know.
Yep.
That's how I chose. But now the other songs are coming into my mind, so we'll have to figure out what to do about that.
So my understanding is that Mother of Muses was somewhat new to you, kind of a discovery.
Totally. Oh, I hadn't heard it at all. And when I heard it, I went, oh, the chords.
Mother Muses, sing for me. Sing of the mountains and the deep dark sea. Sing of the lakes and the nymphs of the forest. Sing your heart out, oh you women of the chorus. Sing of honor and fate and glory be. Mother Muses, sing for me.
The instrumentation of that is very beautiful.
Uh-huh.
It's the jazz guitar parts. It took me a while of listening. How come that bass note is going this way and the other bass note is going that way? And they're just like sounding like simple electric guitar lines, maybe electric, and they're going in two different directions and there's some jazz thing happening. And I worked on it for a while and I finally thought I kind of understood it, but I don't think I ever got quite to the bottom of the exact notes that were being played that made it sound so mystical,
Right.
I'm going to say. Yeah.
Okay. Now you have one other person that, as far as I know, that plays on the record, and that's Cindy Cash Dollar. She's on
Right.
Not Dark Yet.
I was born here and I'll die here against my will. I know it looks like I'm moving, but I'm standing still. Every nerve in my body is so naked and so numb. Can't even remember what it was I came here to get away from.
Okay, Cindy and I have been on and off in a band called Sisters of Slide.
Right.
And we've done, people seem to really enjoy the two of us playing together, and she's a tremendous musician. And so it was an absolute no-brainer because we've done many shows together and she plays all the same songs. She's toured with Bob Dylan, as I mentioned earlier, and she's toured with everybody.
Yep.
Van Morrison, and so it was an obvious thing. Like I'd say, Cindy, I'm doing a Bob Dylan tribute, and I'd name some of the songs. She goes, "Oh yeah, we played all those." And
Yeah.
I'm like, she's ready to just fit right in, you know. And plus, the beauty of her playing is spectacular.
Mhm. Very good. So are
Mhm.
you taking these songs on the road, or do you do gigs, or are you just doing your home thing these days?
we we have been touring 4 buses, all of them bought new,
Right.
and all of them gone through the maximum number of miles and beyond that any bus should ever, till
Okay.
they couldn't run anymore. And my most recent one is broken down.
Oh
It's a
dear.
bigger bus. It's got 340,000 miles on it, and it had to be towed back here. But see, that was about the third or fourth time it had to be towed. We really ran it to the max. It was 340,000 fantastic miles. And
Yeah.
now we're like, I'm ready to go on the road, but we have to go on the road in our bus. And Rob is the guy to fiddle around with all the, the wiring. It's got wiring problems, and it's like just vast amounts of money would have to be spent. Every time that thing broke down on the road, the thousands of dollars worth of repairs. Pardon me. So we're just kind of sitting here wondering what the future will hold. We can take gigs that we can drive to and come home. We're keeping the broadcasting, we're starting it up again.
Right.
But until the bus gets repaired, we're grounded. So again, I have, Cafe Lena in Saratoga Springs. I have an Oneonta College show, but I'm not, and I've done shows here and there. We went down to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival a couple years ago, just by truck, in my truck.
Yep.
But we have to put the dogs in a kennel to do that. And we're not kenneling people. We take our dogs and cats with us
Oh
in the
my
bus
God.
on the road. We're like the what is that family? The Beverly Hillbillies. What
Right.
was the name of that family? Anyway,
Clampets.
Clampett. Yeah. We're like them.
All right.
We have to all be together, piles. No, I'm just kidding. The bus is our house
All right.
when we
Well,
tour.
now,
And without it, we're a little bit grounded, but we're going to figure that one out.
now I was rustling through my record collection and I came across this.
That's right.
So
Disco hell.
Disco Hell. I was hoping I'd get a reaction. I didn't know what it would be.
Back in those days, with the major labels, because we're talking what? I don't know what year that was.
Record.
1970
or 78. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to meet some
79.
great people. There were some great people at the label, but the thing in those days, and I know there's other artists who would back me up on this, artistic freedom was just like a little figment of somebody's imagination.
Right.
When you were a female artist, I think it was a lot of sexism then. I don't feel like it's around now. Honestly, I don't. I think we moved well past that, and to beat that drum right now, I don't really need to. But in the day, it was like radio stations would play any number of male artists one right after the other. Because I know the radio promo guy, who was a very good friend of mine at the company, great people, as I said, and he explained that, you have this going against you, have that going against you, you're singing soul music, and they don't have any other artists like you singing soul music, and those soul stations won't play your record, and the other stations are not ready for you to sing soul. And it just went on and on, all the things that could come against me because I was doing that style before, say, Vicki Sue Robinson, who broke through. Kudos to her for doing that. And then Taylor somebody, not Taylor Swift, of course, some other very good artist, also kind of broke through as a soul artist. But I honestly don't know if there was anybody before me that was doing it quite like I was, like singing Curtis
Taylor
Mayfield
Dane,
songs.
anyway.
What?
Taylor Dane? Or is that who you're thinking of?
Taylor Dane, maybe that's it. Yeah. Taylor Dane, I don't know. But it was rough going because their way or the highway is the way it was. I had no artistic control. They picked the producer, they picked the musicians, they booked the sessions, and I just had to be there and cooperate. Yeah. And it was frustrating.
Right. So, because I was working in radio, commercial radio in that day in the late 70s, and it's absolutely true. I remember being told, because it was fairly free form still, you could play, it
Yeah.
wasn't highly, but don't play two women back to back.
That's exactly it. I hadn't gotten to that. Thank you for bringing me back around. They said, well, we can only play one chick singer at a time. It was, we were the chick singers.
Exactly
And
right.
it had to be one, and then you can, and I questioned it. I said, well, how come you can have 15 men, different artists, and then only one woman, and then you have to like take a long break from the female again? What's that?
If you play
So
Pat
I've been
Bennett's hard, we
complaining.
don't want to hear, you know, Joan.
Whatever. I don't know what it was. That was back in the day. Bonnie Raitt was starting out, and she was building bridges and you know, blazing new trails. And also, what was her name? There was another artist there who I don't know what she's doing now. I'll think of her name.
Okay.
She also was like a deep-throated blues singer, really fantastic woman. Yeah, she was a Woodstock-based artist, and a lot of my friends played. Tracy
Chapman.
No, it wasn't Tracy Chapman. Who, Rob? Yeah, Tracy, I think. Yeah, her name was Tracy.
Tracy Nelson?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and she was blazing trails too. I remember going down to what?
We could do this all day. You just throw out names and all that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because there was so much fantastic music in those days. So much fantastic music.
So when somebody like Patti Smith came along, who came across as being very independent and able, did that affect you? Because you were doing the same thing, you know, you were the same
We
time.
didn't move in the same circles, actually. We probably crossed paths with some of the same people, like Lou Reed. I met him once in Toronto, believe it or not, just in passing. He came to one of my sessions, and you know, something else was going on, and he was just sitting there reading a newspaper in the waiting room or something crazy like that. And me and the producer were like debating about something. So I didn't even, but he was a great artist, but I didn't actually cross paths directly with Patti. So I knew she was a trailblazer too. I knew that. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you think the sexism has kind of gone out of the music business.
In my view.
Plus, that's great. But of course,
in my view,
equally now, nobody's getting paid, it seems like.
Everybody, you're right. Like we're all struggling. And I sometimes, this is strange that you brought that up. Nobody's getting paid. I mean, somebody's getting paid and they deserve the money if they're getting it. But somewhere along the line, when I was touring, no problem. You know, you make money, you pay your bills, you keep touring. You're even able to pay for the $1,000 multi-$1,000 breakdowns, and the refrigerator breaks, and that costs $4,000 because it's more expensive to get a refrigerator for an RV than for your house. I mean, the whole thing is crazy.
Sure it is.
And they know that, and they have a monopoly on that. And you limp along from one repair shop to the next at the end of the life of the motorhome, not in the beginning. But you're able to pay it all. And then we're grounded. I'm going, where's the money? Thinking, what is going on? Shouldn't there be something from somewhere and somehow in the background where my thing got 1 million hits on, or something on Spotify? Who's paying for that? So you got to scratch your head, because there are no longer CD sales. Like, let's say you had a hit in 1970 and you sold 1 million records. You're going to be doing pretty nicely. But you had to pay back vast production budgets first, and then your record might have cost $1 million to make.
They call them recoupables or something like that, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But now just that one guy who runs Spotify is making all the money, and the labels are getting some, and the trickle down is not trickling to the artist.
Yeah, actually, another artist who, I won't mention that person's name, because I like to try to not violate privacy. That's I feel like an important thing. And that person said, one of the big formats, I might as well not mention that format either, but when you get played, you make like 0.0198 of a penny.
I think it's even less than that. I think there's more zeros in front of it.
I mean, you just don't see it.
It ain't
anymore.
Good. No.
No,
and now
it's
everybody's all excited about how many streams they get, as if you take that to the grocery store and turn it.
No, and you can't.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that I am not part of, because I'm sort of a dinosaur when it comes to computer stuff, except for Pro Tools, which hey, I know a lot about Pro Tools. I'm good.
There you go.
But as far as social media, I know I should be paying attention to having, you know,
Yeah.
more of my life posted, and I
Yeah.
don't know. I just
Yeah.
can't quite catch up with that, and I know that now that's required,
It is indeed.
and I must be lagging behind because I don't have. I said to my
You need to put
husband
your
'cause
dogs
he
on and your cats and all that, because that's what everybody wants to know about, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Actually, we have a lot of videos that we haven't done anything with. We used to video the dog walks, millions and millions of animals, things, cats, stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at some point, maybe I just said to my husband, we really have to catch up with that because if you're nominated for an award and you don't have followers on different social media platforms, you'll miss out a little bit.
Yep.
You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
You have to keep up. So
Yep.
we
That-
haven't gone there much yet.
all right. And
Yeah.
you haven't come here to New Zealand, have you? You never been here?
I went to Australia.
Close. No cigar.
Yeah. Yeah. No cigar. I would love to. I've
Yeah.
kind of resolved that flying is not something I've flown a lot.
All right.
Okay,
Fair
because
enough.
I went to Europe twice a year for many, many years. And I hated it from the get-go, but I got to where I could just get on, stop complaining, sit there, pass the hours, do things, and land and get off and feel bad the whole time I'm away, knowing that I have to fly back. I mean, that really plagued me.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh no. And then I was agonized until I was on the ground in terms of the flying thing didn't suit me at all.
Right.
But I did it.
Yep.
I have to say, I stepped into the frying pan countless times. Probably, who knows, hundreds of flights, hundreds. And sometimes it bothered me, but I got used to it and I did it. But now I have discovered air crash disaster, Mayday, the Flight Channel, all these amazing recreations
Yeah.
on computer, and everything I was afraid of and much more happens a lot. And I mean happens a
Oh,
lot,
yeah.
a lot. And I'm like, Rob, because he doesn't watch them like I do. I get interested and I go, oh my God, wings can fall off.
Yep. Well, and
Oh
stay
my
away from
God,
Boeing's going through some things at the moment, so you got to watch out for the new planes as well. So,
yeah, where they're trying to compensate and the computer wants to go the other way, and the more
Yeah.
they turn down, the more it goes up, and then it stalls, and you're like plummeting into I mean, it's way worse than I could ever have imagined. So now I'm like, phew, I
All right.
don't think I know I'm not getting into one of those again.
If you enjoyed this episode of the 13th Floor's Music Talk series, please be sure to subscribe to the website or to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and wherever you find your podcasts. There's a whole lot more to discover.